Hello and welcome to episode 11 of the Wolves Report, where tonight we are joined by two of our regular pundits, Chris Tyler, Mark Knock, and of course myself, Ryan Lester. Tonight we're going to talk about Everton, the lineup, the tactics in the game, the use of subs. We're also going to talk in depth about Neves, Raúl, Ait-Nouri, Kilman. I'm hoping to take lots of your questions, so thanks for your questions in the week. Also, if you want to add any questions or comments and you're watching via Facebook or YouTube, you can put them on. We can get your comments up and try and answer them as well then. So yeah, thanks for your input. And last but not least, we're also going to try and preview Crystal Palace. So boys, last night we've talked about, the last few weeks we've talked about, we wanted a little bit more style. We wanted an identity. We wanted attacking football. We got 4 points from Villa and Leeds. We were delighted from Villa. We're a bit frustrated from Leeds, but last night, the team have given us everything we want. We've had a sexy display and 3 points. Tyler, give us your take on the game.
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, I'm probably the most miserable Wolves fan, in the Midlands, or certainly one of them. But yeah, like I said last night, it was exactly what I'd been looking for. I mentioned it, in a bit of detail last week about wanting a style, an identity, a way of playing, and we saw that in the first 3 games, and then we saw it again last night. I think for the first time in a few weeks, and a relatively faultless performance. I mean, a clean sheet would have topped it off for me. Everton came into it second half, but like Knocker was saying at half time, they were never going to be as bad as they were in the first half, to be fair. But I think we saw the game out fairly comfortably. They had Sars made the one save, but we could have scored 4 or 5, and I think it was as comfortable Premier League performance that we've had, for quite a while, really. No, really pleased.
Before we dig into the game and what happened, Knocker, what was the biggest difference last night? Why were Wolves so good in comparison to the previous weeks?
I got the feeling we really targeted Everton. I think we had a clear plan of how we could get behind them and how we could break the lines, and I think we executed the plan superbly well. The front three was brilliant with their movement. I think Neves and Moutinho were splitting the back line very comfortably. Everton, they had a weird shape about them to me. They were too far apart midfield, defence, and we were splitting them at will. And I just thought we looked organised. We did what we should have done to Leeds when we hit a team who were low on confidence, and we hit them early, and we put them under pressure, and we try and get that first goal, then we try and follow on and get the second goal. And really at 2-0, we were absolutely cruising, didn't we? So it was a really good performance. I was really pleased with the first half in particular.
Well, it's strange how the manager picks his moments for these games, because we hadn't seen that performance for probably since the opening 3 games when we were gushing about the style. But I know, Knocker, you were frustrated at no points because there's no point playing like that unless you can get something from the game. And it was almost like we see an opportunity against Everton. We can be positive. We can believe. We've grinded out some results, and now we know we're better than this team. And last night we went toe to toe with them, and I know the scoreline doesn't suggest it was a dominant performance, but for me it was a really good performance. I was a little bit frustrated we didn't see the game out properly, as in terms of I think we could have gone for the kill and got a third, maybe a fourth. 2-1 I think is flattering to Everton, but we can't complain, boys. I mean, last night everyone's been entertained, haven't they? Thoroughly entertained.
Yeah, I'd agree. Sorry, Chris.
Yeah, I think so, and I think Bruno was quite brave, wasn't he? He'd even sort of called before the game sort of what he was going to do and the reason for playing sort of Trincao and Bang to get in those gaps that Knocky was talking about. And he even gave Everton the heads up, and Rafa still couldn't do anything about it. But we were just finding those pockets time and time again. It was being fizzed into Raúl. It was sticking to him. He was flicking it, laying it off. Everton didn't respond to it. Like you said, 2-0, could have been 3 or 4. But I think you
by half time.
Yeah, and I think you have to give a touch of credit to Everton. They made the change. Del came on, and they did look a different team. But I'm with you, Ryan. I think we were probably a little bit slow to react to that change. But then second half, we hit the post. Trincão's missed a sitter. The best chances were still, for Wolves. So yeah, more than a comfortable win.
I think the most pleasing thing for me, and we've talked about this for a while, Wolves had an identity last night. They looked like they had a proper game plan. And when Wolves got the ball, you kind of knew what was coming, but Everton couldn't do anything about it. And those fizzed balls, as you said, Tyler, pinged into Raúl's feet. The amount of touches and turns he lay off in that first half, I mean, it was delicious. It was like watching me play against FIFA against Nokia about 10 years ago when I used to play. But we want more of that, don't we? That's what we want. So I know sometimes you have to pick and choose your games, and I know they were very, very cautious at Leeds because maybe more frightened of Leeds' reputation for how they press and charge. But surely now we can kick on from this with more of that football. Now, Everton did have players out, but I would say Wolves had players out as well, and Everton are no mug. So if we can do that, Palace is a tough test, but this has got to be the way forward for me now. I mean, in terms of the lineup last night as well, I mean, let's talk about the goals. First of all, I mean, we've got to talk about your bet knocker that you talked about. I want to give you some credit from that. I also want to give some credit to my dad as well, because we talked about Max Kilman. Me and my dad had a bet on Max Kilman, and that went very well indeed. So I'm quite chuffed with that. And I know you sent a recording earlier on, Knocker, but Max Kilman's header would have been nothing without Ait-Nouri's corner. How long have we been waiting for corners to be whipped in like that for one of our big centre-backs to head it home? I mean, it's almost, when you've got a defender who's that big and strong, how do you defend against that? Tyler?
Well, you can't, and they couldn't, could you? And it was quite interesting, wasn't it? Because I think Martinho maybe took the first corner, I think, of the game. So it was interesting to see, Ait-Nouri take the next one. You called it a few weeks ago, Ryan, the Tottenham game. We whipped a corner in with pace. We scored.
Donkey, yeah.
Yeah, it's obviously not a fluke, is it? The ball's a bit flatter, it's got a bit more pace on, and he attacked it well and did what they say to do, headed it into the ground. The bounce over Pickford meant he probably couldn't do much about it. But yeah, great to see, an assist from Ait-Nouri and a first goal for Kilman.
Well, I think it's that old rule in football, isn't it? Of when a cross is put into you as a striker or anybody heading, you head the ball back where it's come from, and that's the most difficult for the keeper to get. As you know, sort of doing a bit of keeping yourself in the past, Tyler. But I mean, we want more of that, don't we? Now, Knocker, those kind of corners. To be honest, Ait-Nouri's delivery looks that good. I almost think I'd like to try and bending him in from the right hand side and out swinging from the left. Surely that's something we've got to look at from corners. But let's talk about the second goal, Knocker. Talk us through that second goal and what you thought about that.
Yeah, just absolute touch of class, isn't it? He scored 2 goals this season. Both of them are going to be in the end of season show, aren't they? Because they're both absolutely incredible. I mean, it's not just the finish; it's the awareness.
Anticipation is massive.
He anticipated it. He anticipated better than I think it was Holgate, because he spotted what was happening before it happened, and Holgate's got probably 2-3 yards on him, but Jimenez has gone and he's got himself in front, and the composure to control that and just dink it, the arrogance of it, it's almost like getting slapped in the face at it, because he's just made him look silly. And Pickford have pulled off some really good saves as well when you think about the shot whipped in from Trincao. But he's just absolutely done him, and he doesn't even break stride in his celebration. He's just such a cultured footballer. We've all waxed lyrical about him the last few weeks, and we all had the conversation: was he going to be the same Raúl Jimenez? All he was missing was that game time, was just that bit of getting back into the swing of it, bringing that sharpness back up, and he's showing that now. And that finish was absolutely top class. You wouldn't get a better finish from any player in the world at the moment, I don't think.
Well, I mean, it was that the anticipation is brilliant. The first touch to set himself at that speed, and then to clip it over to sit down the England keeper, who is a great shot stopper, by the way. Yeah. I mean, I was behind that goal, and it was just a Molyneux just loved that. And that C Senor after the goal was just was out of this world. It was so good. But that's a goal that we wouldn't have scored at Villa, and that's a goal we wouldn't have scored at Leeds, because Wolves weren't that high up the pitch. So Wolves have been rewarded for their bravery. It's a medium press there, but the anticipation. Now, we're sitting on the halfway line even deeper in the previous weeks. Now, we've shown that we can hurt teams now doing that. So our bravery has been rewarded, and it was so good. But
I think we have got. Sorry, Matt. I think we have got into those positions before, but Adama's had probably 3 1-on-1s he's missed. Semedo's had a couple
first 3 games of the season. Yeah.
The difference is, I don't think anyone in the stadium thought Raúl was missing that. As soon as he gets through 1-on-1,
you just felt like he was going to score, didn't you? You just
knew. It. Whereas when Adama gets through, you're sort of thinking, it's very much 50-50. He's just going to whack it. Whereas he's got such a intelligent football brain that he knows exactly what he's going to do. There's nothing's an accident with Jimenez. He knows exactly where he's going to put the ball, and he does it 9 times out of 10.
We're going to talk about Jimenez a bit more in depth, because I think, his performance was brilliant. But I want to talk more about that first half performance. And for me, it was as good as the Man United, Spurs, or the second half at Leicester. That first half probably quieting down about a little bit the last sort of 5 or 10 minutes, but you'd expect that, because you can't continually press and go again, because they're humans at the end of the day. They can't be sprinting the whole game. But the Semedo was good. Ait-Nouri was good. They're both getting it there and supporting. Hwang was good. The little one touches and the intricate football. And I've got to say, you've got to get a lot of credit to Trincao for that intricate play, because some of his one touch passing around the box, the intelligence, it was so good. And at half time, I was like, well, this is it, boys. This is what we've been waiting for. We were teased at the start of the season. We had a little tester, and now this is the real deal again. So, I mean, sitting up in 7th, looking sweet at half time, but Wolves are maybe a little bit too negative at the start of the second half, Knocker.
I'm not so sure, to be honest. I've seen a lot of people say that they felt we were negative second half. But Everton are no mugs. They've been in the Premier League since it started. They've got some really experienced players. They were never going to be that bad second half. They were always going to make a bit of a game of it. And when they brought Delph on, and they sort of stopped us splitting the lines the way we had in the first half, and they put us under a bit more pressure, played 10 yards further up the pitch. You can imagine the sort of conversation they would have had at half time. So they were always going to improve. And I think when you look at it as a whole, yes, they had the better of the second half, but if Trincao puts his chance away from sort of 7 yards, it's 3-1, and we're not having this conversation. It's just the perfect performance. So yeah, we did maybe go a little bit deeper, and we did perhaps, I don't know, maybe we had the Leeds game in mind when we got caught out late, and it would have been nice if we'd have carried on and trying to put them to the sword. But were we ever really in danger after they got their goal from Iwobi? I mean, they had the header that was saved.
Yeah,
but really, I don't think they ever put us under, constant pressure. We played out the last 5 minutes in injury time really well. We kept control of the game. So
managed the game well then.
Yeah, it was a real continental sort of second half, I would say, where we just did what we needed to do. We were disciplined. We didn't go searching. Because if you go steaming for that third goal and you get caught out with the ball over the top and it's 2-2, we're all asking the questions then, aren't we? So I think it wasn't a great second half performance, but I thought it was a very professional job.
But would you say, Tyler, possibly at 2-0, we've already seen what the team can do? We've already seen how dangerous Trincao, Hwang and Raúl were linking up, and Ait-Nouri as well. How should we have gone for the third and just killed the game totally? Because at 3-0, I think it's your dad says, Knocker, 2-0 is such a dangerous score in a game. I mean, it's not just your dad. Everyone says it's such a dangerous score in a game, because you hit that third, then I think Everton are dead. Then they're completely gone.
It is if you're a Villa fan, so.
Oh, get in there. Anyway, enough of that.
It's been right for that one. No, I think I'm inclined to agree with Knocker, and you can't play that press for 90 minutes. You can't. And I know there's been a lot on Twitter around the substitutes, and could they have been,
we'll go on to that next, yeah.
And that's something we could talk about. But I'm inclined with Knocker on this. Everton aren't a terrible side. They ever had injuries, but the Benitez tweak putting Delph on stopped us finding those little gaps in between. So I think I'm giving a bit of credit to the opposition rather than thinking, well, Wolves just didn't play as well second half. I think a lot of it was down to Everton stopping us playing. But, I was really encouraged. Sort of last thought for me on the first half was how high the wing backs were. And I think we've all wanted to see a back four. But I've got no issue if it's a back three like it is last night, when you have got speed.
Yeah, I agree.
As genuine, high at wing players. You've got the two inverted forwards. It all comes together then. So I've got no issue with it if it's played that way. That was just the point I wanted to make. I think the full backs were excellent getting forward and supporting. Well,
yeah, let's stick on that a minute. And that makes such a difference, because, again, we didn't have that at Villa or Leeds. We just sort of tucked in and invited them on. But I don't think when Ait-Nouri's playing, you're allowed to play that way, because he's a wing back. His talent and his gifts are getting forward with the ball. I mean, we'll talk about him in a bit, but I thought his desire to get forward and support and get to the wide left or put crosses in and do some of that incredible footwork that he's got makes such a difference to us. So it then becomes the 3-4-3 of when Wolves got promoted again, and it's that attacking football as opposed to 5 at the back when we got lucky at Villa, and probably a little bit lucky at Leeds as well, to be honest, even though, we talked about Leeds. But let's talk about the subs in the game. Now, this is, not subs in the game, just subs as a whole, really. This is something that we've looked at in the games. It's hard to argue because we're 7th and I'm finding points to critique. But at Leeds away, I thought, well, I'm going to combine Leeds and last night, but Leeds away, surely later in the game, when you tucked in, you want Adama on the halfway line or out wide. So you've got a percentage ball. And I thought last night as well, when we were pinned back a little bit as well, surely Adama on the break there. Anyone agree with that?
Yeah, I think we need to be a little bit a bit earlier with the subs. I think we do tend to leave it a little bit late. As far as Adama, I had no issue with Podence coming on because I think he can do a similar job to Adama and maybe holds the ball up a little bit better than Adama. He's a little bit better at that sort of, not just steaming off down the field. But yeah, I mean, against Leeds, I think we should have brought Dendoncker on and took off one of the attackers and tried to go for a bit more solidity in midfield. And I think he tried to do that in a sense, but I don't think it was. I don't know. I think he left it a little bit late. We were under quite a bit of pressure.
Yeah, that's the point. I just think in all these games, I mean, like I said, we're just three blokes that love our football team that are sharing our views. But it just looks like from the stands we can see that we need these subs 5 or 10 minutes earlier. It's almost like we're waiting too long. I think we've got away with it so far. But yeah, I'd just like to see it a bit more. But at the end of the day, we won 2-1. Wolves are in 7th and they've played well, so we can't really complain. Just one thing about Trincao and Adama. Someone mentioned to me last night, this is a really good point. It's like the manager said he picks the team for the opposition he's facing, and he'll change it whatever. He doesn't really care. And a lot of people questioning, and I've got some questions about Adama coming up shortly. I think we'll go on to those. About Adama being left out. Why did he get left out last night? And the reason I think he got left out, you guys might think differently, is because we knew Everton, with the way they were going to tuck in. Now, Adama isn't quite as effective against a team who were sat on the edge of their own box or sat a little or who were tucking in with two holding midfielders. You kind of want Adama against a team that's going to go toe to toe, like when Man United played us at Molineux, like what Leicester did at the start of the season. Those games when he's got the space. And I mean that's my take on it. But he got it right because Trincao was fantastic, wasn't
he? Yeah, I think for me that was his best game in a Wolves shirt by quite a distance. We've seen the nice touches and the nutmegs and the little 1-2s, and that's great. And if he'd have got his goal last night, he probably would have been the perfect performance. You know, he forced Pickford into a wonder save. He was just getting in pockets. But every time the ball was played into him, it stuck to him. He was turning, he was laying it off. And they're such different players, aren't they? And I think what it comes down to for me is, as you know, I'm an Adama fan. I've put it on him numerous times, but he hasn't got the football brain that, you know, Trincao's got. And at the moment,
or maybe the touch as well.
That's the difference. And the touch, yeah, you know, there's a lot been on Twitter today around the Wolves fans, you know, saying about would you cash in and would you buy? And I've thought about it more today than I probably have for a while. But I thought Trincao was excellent. Like I said, Bruno said he was picked to get in those pockets and it worked perfectly. Will it work perfectly every week? I don't know, but it did last night.
And I think because it's a game where Everton had like almost 2 banks of 4 at times and you're trying to pick out the pockets of space, Trincao's perfect for that because in terms of his footwork and his touch, he's one of the most talented footballers at the club without a doubt. Whereas Adama would have to run, although he can run past 2 or 3 people, it's a lot harder in a confined space, isn't it? Because them 2 tackles are really close together. But while we're talking about Adama, let's answer a couple of questions. Let's go through the ones about Adama. We'll try and bunch them together. Chris Huge Wolf on Twitter. Is Adama on his way out? Let's talk. There's a couple of others as well. On that, would you cash in Wayne Mackay? Would you cash in Adama? A few people have said as well, with his contract running down, this is from Steve Lees, with his contract running down the way it is it time to sell Adama? It doesn't seem to fit into our more fluid style. There's no doubt Wolves play better football without Adama. But, I mean, him being left out from one game, I don't think he means he's definitely going because he might start away next week. He might not do. I don't know, boys. But his contract's running out. We were given hints in the press that he was close to signing. And then he got dropped for 2 games. He didn't kick a ball last night. So, Knocker, what we're going to do with Adama?
It doesn't seem to me like he's going to sign a deal. I mean, we've had other players who've had deals wrapped up. We've heard about it on a Monday and he signed on a Thursday. So this seems to be really dragging on now. The question is, if you cash in on him, do you cash in on him now, or when you get to the January window, or do you wait to the end of the season? Because obviously you're going to lose quite hefty value off him. The problem we have, though, is the size of our squad. Can you get rid of him and replace him in that month window? I'm not so sure we can. So I personally, I wouldn't get rid of him because I think he gives you something different. I think, like you say, when you're playing away at your Manus, we saw what he did to Man City a couple of years ago when we had him on the break. But it may get to the point where they think we can get 30 million for him now, or maybe we get 15, 20 for him at the end of the season. And I can see him taking it, if I'm being totally honest with you.
Yeah, there's a few people, Dave, my dad, on there, Lincolnshire Wolf as well. What should we sell? Not if we should. What should we sell Adama for in January? Now, I mean, I love Adama, and I think he's that player that can win a game from nothing. And I know he hasn't got the Championship manager stats of assists or goals this year, but his contribution in the build-up to goals and what he does to the team, I think, is really, really important. Like at Villa, he was involved in every goal, but he doesn't get any fantasy football points because he didn't assist or score. But he was a massive part of that game. Wolves were terrible, but he played a huge part in keeping Wolves in that game and turning it round. So for me, if we could keep him, I absolutely would. If I think he would have signed by now, I think he would as well. So it's a concern for me. However, we do have the luxury, if Pedro Neto should come back fully fit and you cash in on Adama and you could spend it on somewhere else, then you've got to look at these things because like it happened with Jota, Wolves are going to have to sell players eventually. The players like that are going to come in and we're going to have to sell. I don't want to sell him. But like we both said in the past, for me, if there's a deal that can be done to pay him the wages that he wants with a buyout clause in his contract, I think that protects our asset. We get more money. He gets the money he wants. But maybe he's not happy with the game started. I don't know. What's your take, Tyler? What do you think we should do?
I think we're at the point where we look a better team without him in it. And I'm quite surprised I'm saying that, to be honest, because, you know...
But I'm sorry to jump in, mate, but sorry to jump in on that. But, you know, you said we looked a better team last night, but at the start of the season, when he was in the team at Spurs, Leicester and Man United, we couldn't say that then, though. So I had to jump in and say that because it gives... Yeah,
it's fair, but we didn't have Wang in those games, who has come in, scored 4 goals and nailed a place for himself. We've still got Podence, we've still got Neto on the bench. It's a lovely problem to have, isn't it? It's a headache probably all managers want. They want selection problems and selection issues. I just think there was a tendency a lot of the time, I think a little bit at Leeds, a bit at Villa, where when Adama plays, our tactics are pass it to Adama and see if he can run up the pitch and either shoot or cross. Whereas there was none of that last night. There was proper build at play. It was at the pace that Wolves wanted it to be. We were happy to go back
fluid,
to
wasn't it?
And start again. And we don't get that when Adama's in the side. So for me, I think he's not getting in the 11 at the moment, not in Bruno's 11. And let's be honest, as an impact sub, I know he's got the pace and the power, but he doesn't really tend to do too much when he comes off the bench a lot of the time. So it's a bit of a headache for Bruno, but maybe not a bad one to have. You know, if we can afford to keep him out the side and get performances and results, then we'll keep doing that, I'd have thought.
I think that when you look at the way that we set up, when you look at our squad as a whole, the way that we like to shape it, the way we like the volume that we like to have in the squad, I think we're quite top heavy in the attacking area. We're going to sign Hwang, aren't we? So for me, I think one of them is going to have to go in order for us to balance the squad. So it's I mean, I wouldn't get rid of Podence, and I think if you're looking at someone you're going to get the most money for at this moment in time, it's going to be Adama, and he's the one who's not playing. He looks like he's probably third choice for his own position at the moment. So I think we are top heavy there, and I think he's going to be the one to go. I really do, especially if he's not going to sign a new deal. Because if you're not going to sign a new deal, you risk losing him on a free in 12 months, don't you? So none of us want to be in that situation.
No, absolutely not. But what I would say though is, I mean, in years gone by, would you ever have thought that we'd have attacking forward options now when you've got someone like Podence and someone like Adama who don't start? I mean, we've never been blessed in forward areas like this. Now, I feel a little bit sorry for Podence. He's not really on the list tonight, but I feel sorry for him because his only real position for me is the number 10. I know we mentioned this in the past, so I feel sorry for him when he he comes on and he has to sort of play wide. I feel he's much more of an impact, like especially at Villa. That last 15 minutes he came on, Wolves looked a completely different side. So it's nice to have options like that, and it shows we're at least one area of the pitch. There's multiple choices. But let's go back and talk about a few players before we hit the questions a little bit later on. Yesterday, for me, it was really hard to pick man of the match because you could probably pick. I mean, I'd say it's the first time this season every player was a 7.5, 8 out of 10 throughout the team. It was every player was good, but for me, yesterday, Ruben Neves. I know he didn't get the glamour to the game, but I thought that was an incredible midfield performance. The tackles, the running, the blocks, the distribution, the first touch, knocking it around, the decision making and the long balls. It was just I'm purring about Ruben Neves, Knocker. Knocker, what did you make of him last night?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely bang on. He won't get the kind of recognition of a Max Kilman or of an Ait-Nouri because he does this week in, week out, doesn't he? He's an absolutely phenomenal player. But it's the energy he brings to that midfield as well. I mean, he ain't the fastest player in the world, but he never stops running.
That, isn't he?
He's just up and down. He wins tackles. He can distribute the ball. He controls it well. I think we all thought, was him and Martinho really still working? But judging on yesterday's performance, it absolutely is, because they complemented each other really well yesterday. And he seems to be a little bit more off the lead under Lars. He seems to have a little bit more freedom to get forward when you want and drop in when you feel. He's almost got a free role in midfield at the moment, and I think it's definitely suiting him. He looks happy as well. He looks like he's really enjoying his football, which I think makes a huge difference.
I mean, we know how happy he was because when we were near at the front at Villa Park, and he's come like wading in with other fans. Yeah, he's very happy. But I wouldn't say quite it's a free role, but I know what you're saying. But what I would say is because Wolves are playing even 5 or 10 yards higher up, because he's allowed to express himself so much more, he looks like he's got the freedom of the pitch. When in reality now, he's playing as a centre midfielder who can get a bit forward and backwards, as opposed to just tucking in and playing it left and right all the time. But like I said, Tyler, I'm absolutely purring about Neves last night. I mean, what was your take on him?
Yeah, and I think what Knocker means by free role is in the Nuno, he was basically partnering Cody, wasn't he? Yeah. As a second singer. Now
a second quarter. Yeah.
Yeah, to get around the pitch. And I think I said it after the second or third game of the season about, how he probably will overtake Martinho potentially as the best player we've seen in a Wolves shirt. And he's just an all-round central midfield player that there aren't many of now. They either sit in front of the back four, or they're a number 10, or he does all of it. And, the performance was just exceptional. I mean, the volley on target was nice to see again. He actually had a shot on target, which was a bonus as well. So I think, I don't think there's any adjectives you can use to describe him that you haven't already. I just think he's imperious in that midfield role. And I think we went to Leeds, didn't we, Ryan? And we noticed massively he wasn't playing when Denmark was playing. And you don't know sometimes what is it
exactly
until it's gone. And when he was in that midfield, we were nowhere near the same team that we can be. So for me, he's first name on the team sheet, no problem.
Yeah, I mean, I just felt we had to talk about him a little bit tonight because he was so good. So good last night. But he wasn't alone, so we need to talk about the others as well. Now, last night, Raúl Jimenez, I thought again was tremendous, and I'm going to put this out there now, and you might not agree with me. I think Jimenez played better last night than he ever did before his injury. I thought last night was a complete centre-forward performance. Won headers, knocked people off the ball. He looked quick. He looked strong. He's touching. He come deep. He was laying it off. I'm purring about another Wolves player because I'm absolutely loving last night. But Raúl Jimenez last night, that was a proper number 9 performance with a disgusting finish. Knocker.
Yeah, he's absolutely top class. We said before, he probably spends 60% of the game with his back to goal because he's always looking to get the ball, play other people in. I think with Hwang now, he's got someone who really complements him in that area. He can do everything, can't he? He lays the ball off. He never seems to give it away. He's always looking for the options. He's always thinking, is there a ball there? Can I move into midfield? If there's not, I'll drop back inside. And the finish sums him up. He's the best striker we've had there since I missed the ball, I think. I don't think we've ever had anyone anywhere near to this level.
Better than Bully. He's better than Bully.
Don't do that. Yeah, you're right. He's a better footballer. There's no.
He's a better footballer, but in terms of his status, he's not at Bully's level yet. But in terms of his quality, of course, he's a better footballer than Bully. But Bully will always be. He'll always be miles ahead of anybody else because of what he did and the time he did and where he took us to. But in terms of popularity, I mean, and in terms of what he brings to us, he's at Bully's level because he gives us something that we haven't got anywhere else on the pitch. And we've noticed it when he's not on the pitch and when he's not playing, we just don't look dangerous in those attacking areas. It doesn't knit. We've got no one to hold it up. Against Villa in that first sort of 80 minutes, there was nothing and nothing was sticking. It was bouncing off. It was coming wide. It was dropping back into midfield. We're ending up back on our own area because we've got no one to hold the ball up. He gives you everything. He's an absolutely phenomenal footballer. He really is.
Yeah, it's similar. And sorry, Ron, it's similar to the Neves. You notice him when he's not there. The second half of last season was just painful to watch, wasn't it? And the Villa game again, we're just not the same team without him in it. And I genuinely, I'm not saying it because I support Wolves. I genuinely think he could walk into any Premier League team. I know that's a bit of a bold statement, but you're telling me you couldn't lead the line for a Man U, an Arsenal, a Man City at the moment? I think he's that good.
I think he probably doesn't start for Chelsea. Otherwise, then you probably think where, because the way he links the play. Now, for me, the biggest difference this season, I mean, obviously he had something terrible happen to him. And as soon as he scored that first goal now, he has got a fresh lease of life now. He's loving his football. But the big difference for me now, as you just mentioned then, he's dropping 10 yards deeper and collecting. And because he's so strong, I mean, the two turns against Newcastle, strength and skill, using his ability as a footballer, not just as a finisher. And I mean, he looked absolutely fantastic. I think he's peaking now. I honestly think he's better than he was before. He seems to have the lot. And he's such a great guy to have for our club. Loves it as well. I mean, last night he scores one of the most ridiculously dirty finishes, and he celebrates. He's just like, a little
naughty,
smile.
Wasn't it?
It's naughty. It's so naughty. Naughty Raúl.
if he plays for any other team, like any of those top 6 teams, he's in the bracket of world class. People will be talking about him as a world class footballer because of what he brings to the team. And like you say, the finish, when you can score a goal like that and celebrate like that, you know you're a cut above everybody else. Because if that was anyone else, or that was any of us when we used to play together, and you just walked home, wouldn't you? Because you've peaked, you're never going to top that, are you? So he's just top draw, and I love having him here. And if he hadn't have had that injury and he would have still reached this level, I think we'd have been having a few conversations about teams coming in for him. But I think the way things have gone, he's settled, he's happy, he's enjoying his football again, his family's here. And again, with Neves, he's really happy. You can just tell that he loves being part of this football club. And when you hear C Senor rolling down from the stands, and
wonderful.
That must put, it puts the hair on your back of your neck.
Well, he said it himself, didn't he? He said the love he feels from the fans, he never expected it, and he hears that "Si Senor" song, and he's so happy. I mean, I'm happy just talking about him. So God knows how he feels. But I mean, I think as well with Wolves that the more attacking football they play and the higher they press, the more we'll get out of Raúl. When he's isolated, although he can run at people, the relationship he's built with Hwang for sure, and for Trincao last night. That looks a dangerous 3. That really looks a dangerous 3. So I'm delighted again, and I mean we're going to move on because I need to give everyone a bit of love because there's some great performances. But and we'll talk about someone now that we've talked about pretty much since the 4th game of the season, and he should be coming into the team. We talk about Ryan Ait-Nouri. Now we've all said it. That kid has got to be in the team. Now Marcel, for the first 3 games, Wolves lost, but he was one of Wolves' best players. He was horrible in the tackle. He's a bit nasty, and I know you love a bit of that knocker. And he was in there, and he gave Wolves a little bit, but he had a little wobble at Watford, but got 2 assists. And then from then onwards, I think at Southampton, he was really poor. Well, that was a nice day for you, Tyler, at Southampton, at least you won. But he was really poor. But Ait-Nouri, for me, he's the wing back that has to start in that team. He was a big reason last night for Wolves' performance. I've never seen at Wolves footwork on a left back stroke left wing back like that. I mean, Tyler, tell me what you think about Ryan Ait-Nouri.
I mean, you haven't left me much to work with, son, to be honest.
Can't help it. Sorry.
You've said it all, but I mean, like I said, we've been saying it. I think 99.9% of Wolves fans have been saying it. Just crying for him to get in the team, and he did all right last week at Leeds. Tough place to go, volatile atmosphere. Leeds throwing everything forward.
Good in the first half, very good in the first half.
More than held his own before he went off, and even had a half chance that he created for himself. He just gives, like I said at the start, it just gives us that natural balance of wing backs that are happy to go forward. And it sounds quite basic, but Marcel gets a nosebleed over the halfway line, doesn't he? And Ait-Nouri, I think he gets sometimes criticised that he's not good defensively, but I don't agree with that. I think
what's he done wrong in these last 2 games?
Exactly. I think he's a more than competent defender. It's obviously part of the game he's working on, and I think Bruno said he needs to work on it, but he's just got that natural ability to beat people, to get forward, to cross, to shoot. And I think, we just look a much better side. It enables Hwang to sort of tuck in, get close to Raúl. It frees up the left side for Ait-Nouri. The guy's 20 years old, I just don't, it's a no-brainer for me. He's playing out of them 2. And I just, pray that Bruno sees that as well and keeps him in the team, because I think we're a much better team with him in it, certainly offensively.
Yeah, and I mean, we haven't left you much there, Knocker, but we've paid £10 million for one of the most silky attacking left wing backs that should be in our team. I mean, I believe that the deal was that if we sell him now, the parent club originally get 50% of the sell on, but we pay another 10 million, and he's completely Wolves. There's no then. So for one, if he plays like this, I'll be taking it up, Knocker. But how much better are Wolves for him being in the side and that side of the pitch?
It makes such a difference. It really does, because it's not just the fact that he is good defensively. I think it's a bit of a myth that he can't defend. But when you've got someone who pushes on like that, it naturally pushes your opposition back. Because if they're playing with wing backs, they've got to drop back. Or if you're playing with a flying winger, they're going to have to go back to support the wing back, because you're putting them under that pressure. And it's not just the attacking, the defending. It was the set piece. Martinho takes every set piece, and they're all floaty and they're all similar. And sometimes that'll work for you, but it's nothing wrong with switching it. Let's try something different. And the ball he swung in, it was with pace, it was accurate, and Kilman's not really had to jump for it. He's a small jump, bang, it's in the back of the net, and it's 1-0. And I just think his distribution's good. Last season, there was a few moments where he kind of had a little bit of a panic and just sort of smashed it out of play or ended up giving it away. Now I think he's more cultured. He seems to be turning back inside, looking for options. Yeah. And I mean, he's only got in the team because of Marko's injury. I don't think he'd be in the team if it wasn't for that injury. So he's got lucky in a sense. But
we said that though, didn't we? We said Marcel can't stay fit and his chance will come soon. No. And I've got to say, he is taking his chance. He's absolutely taking his chance. But
if you're talking 20 million with the second buyout for a player of that quality,
another 10 million.
That is a ridiculous piece of business. I mean, we've absolutely had their pants down for 20 million quid for a full, complete buyout of that lad, because there's no limit to where he can go. I mean, you look at some of the top, the top wing backs, top fullbacks in the league at the minute, and you can see him edging towards that bracket. I know it's very, very early, but you can see the potential that's there.
He's so naturally gifted on the ball. The way he twists and turns, and I mean, sometimes you don't even know what's happened, and he's just bought a yard and he's cut inside. But I just want to talk before we move on to Max. I want to talk about we talked about earlier on, but the basics of those corners. It's no fluke. Ait-Nouri's got 2 assists from corners, because they're both out swinging corners. He's whipped them in viciously, and there were perfect balls landing on the edge of the 6-yard box where they hit so hard the keeper hasn't got hardly any time to commit. We need more of that. Honestly, boys, I'll be tempted to put both sides, whipping them in one side and in swinging on the other, because, I mean, it's so nice to have so many positive to talk about. Yeah, so...
there's nothing wrong with interchanging, though, is there? There's nothing wrong with, you take this one, Martinho takes the last one, switch your sides around. Just don't do the same thing all the time, because it's so easy to read. You know exactly where the ball's going to go. And like you say, he's drilling them to the 6-yard box. And you can't defend that ball.
Yeah,
you really can't
defend
it.
So good. Yeah. Right, then let's talk about one last player that deserves a mention before we move on to some questions and talk about Palace. Now, this one's going to take a little bit of time. Max Kilman. I mean, just probably ahead of Jose Sarr for player of the season so far. I mean, we talked about why didn't he get games before, but all of a sudden, he's Wolves' best centre-back, and no one's going to argue, because he's cultured. I mean, how many times has he got in a position this season? Hit the bar at Villa. There's a couple, I think, at Leicester. He probably should have been a bit more aggressive to score a goal there. He gets in positions. Knocker, you called him first scorer. My dad called him first scorer. I called him first scorer. And an all-round complete performance. I mean, he's one of the players that's unlucky not to be man of the match last night. There was that many good shows. But Max Kilman, boys, I mean, here's the big question that's going to come up on the screen. And I know you're not sure about this, Tyler, but will Kilman make the next England squad?
I think I was saying to you, boys, I'm a bit old school with England squads, and I don't like the fact that you have 5 or 6 games and you get an England cap. But I think, and that's nothing against Kilman, he's been fabulous. But I'd say that about any player. I think you need to become a real master of your trade to get that England nod. Although times have changed now, and England caps are handed out like sweets, aren't they, a lot of the time? So if you're talking about left-sided English centre-backs, you've got the obvious ones. You've got Maguire, you've got Mings that's been in there. Kilman's in that conversation now, isn't he? He's got to be. You know, Southgate was there last night. He'd have been, I'm sure, keeping an eye on him. There's not a lot to say about him. He's just so calm, so collected. You know, this was a guy that I think Nuno was happy to sell to Barnsley for a couple of million last season, and it's just a good job he didn't do that because, you know, that would have been a travesty, wouldn't it? The guy's just gone on leaps and bounds. His confidence, you know, when he first broke into the side, you could sort of tell, and I think now he's still got that quiet, shy side to him. But every game it's coming out a bit more, and getting that header and getting that goal and sort of just being the main man last night to attack that ball.
Brilliant.
Was just brilliant.
When the England manager's watching as well. But
exactly. He's done himself. You know, you said he's Wolves' best centre-back, but we've got another centre-back who's in the England squad, so you work out the logic, you know. It's one of those, isn't it? It's, again, a nice position to be in, to have two, you know, English centre-backs vying, you know, potentially for a call-up.
But not only these performances have been good, Knocker, from Kilman, he's also the only centre-back in the team at the three that's playing on his weak side. So he's playing on his weaker side when he's not even playing. Imagine what he could do on his stronger side. Now, I know some players prefer to do that, but he's the youngest centre. He's the youngest sort of defender of the three, and he's playing on his weaker foot. I mean, how far is Max going to go?
He's a very, very good player, isn't he? I mean, in answer to Dave's question, I don't think he'll get in the England squad this time, but I think he'll be in it by the end of the season if he carries on the way he's going, because he's such a talented lad. He reminds me a lot of Willy Bolly. The first season we had him in the Championship, where he almost looked bored most of the game because it was so easy for him. He's just so easy. He looks like everything's at a canter. He's never panicked. You know, I know Chris said he looks shy, he looks a bit nervous, and he does look shy, but he always looks in control. You never see him just swipe the ball out of play. I mean, you see him beat players as well, and I don't know if you know, but he used to play futsal for England. But he,
every week.
I was going to say, he's got an England cap already.
He's got one, yeah. But I think the way that he manipulates the ball, he's looking to take players on. And there's, you know, if you look at him, there's 5 or 6 occasions that he drives over the halfway line with the ball. And
he was doing that a lot of Villa,
yeah. And I think he's a really, really talented lad. And how far can he go? I think the sky's the limit. I really do. I think he's the best centre back we've had potentially. I can't remember we ever having one of that with that kind of level of potential. Probably since Dean Richards.
Dean Richards,
boys, less Scott when he came through, maybe.
We've got some questions we want to get through, and we've got 18 minutes left. We're flying through. Graham Cope asks, does the emergence of Kilman and Nouri leave serious doubts over Willy Bolly and Marcel's future at Wolves? How long is Willy Bolly going to remain happy sitting on the bench? Quick answers, boys.
I don't want players happy sitting on the bench. You know, you need competition. You need to fight for places. Marcel, will he stay past the end of this season? I don't think so. If Ait-Nouri
2-year contract, he's not going to do that. Yeah.
And then Bolly, he still gets in my best back three for saves, but at the moment it's hard to drop any of them. But you know, you don't want players happy on the bench. You want them disgruntled and trying to get in the side. So for me, Bolly's place, you know, at the moment, until there's an injury, might be on the bench.
Another question from a friend of mine, Andy Hipkins, asks, who replaces Sace when he goes to the African Cup of Nations? Now, naturally, you would probably say Willy Bolly comes in, but is there an argument that I think Mark responded in there that you could play Marcel less centre-back, Knocker?
We might have to, because we're a little bit low on the ground, aren't we? I mean, you could potentially play Dendoncker there, but again, square pegs in round holes. So
I think I'd want a lefty there.
I'd want a lefty. So, yeah, I probably think Mark will come in with Ait-Nouri staying in his position if Marcel's fit. If he's not, then we've got a problem for me. But, I mean, we all thought maybe we'd be 4-2-3-1 by then. I don't see that happening. I think we'll stick with what we've got now probably for the remainder of the season. So, yeah, for me, Mark comes in, Ait-Nouri stays where he is, and we try and keep it as similar as we can.
Yeah. Another couple of comments from Polecat. Surely Ait-Nouri's on his way now. I think we covered that earlier on in terms of what we're thinking not to on his contract. And this is a really fair point, and I'll hold my hands up here from last night as well. Let's put the 4 at the back discussion to bed for now. 5 at the back all the way with Ait-Nouri and Nelson. And I think that's a fair point, because if Wolves set up and play like they did last night, I'm happy for it not to be 4 at the back. The only reason I've been crying out for 4 at the back is because at times they were boring us to death from the stands, from the negative football. If it's an attacking, positive wing backs And you know what? Nelson deserves a shake, because I thought Nelson was really good last night.
Yeah.
Another 7.5, 8 out of 10. But I thought there was some really tough tackles, some good football. So, and you know what, Polcat, that's a really fair point. So hands up. You know what? I totally agree. So that's fair dues on that. I think that's almost the all of the Twitter questions I've gone through. Seeing the game out. Here we go. Here's one from Mr. C. Sorry, Mr. C, a regular viewer from YouTube and from Twitter. There's an overlap here. Richard says, would you cut your losses and accept 20 million if someone's prepared to pay for Fabio, if that helped us sign Renato Sanchez? Would we swallow our prop?
I'd take 20 quid and drive him there myself.
I wouldn't know. I'd stick to him.
No, but I know Richard's asking the question because he's not getting in there. I mean, will Wolves take? I don't think Wolves would swallow their pride enough now. To be honest, they wouldn't say we'll take 15 million from him. I don't think they'll do that. I think Fabio will be here for another year. Maybe he'll go on loan somewhere. But sorry, that was Richard's question, and you know what? It's a fair question. Would you take a loss on him so we could bring someone else in?
But it's a fair question, but at the same time, we don't need to be taking losses on players. We're a Premier League team. We shouldn't need to remove people to bring new players in. And I think Fabio's having a season now that we expected him to have last year. He's getting 10, 15 minutes here and there, and we can really start to gauge his progression rather than throwing him in and then slaughtering him because he's not banging in 10 goals a season for us. So let's give him to the end of the season, see if he develops, and then it's a different conversation.
Yeah, sorry. Mr. Sid responded to Richard by saying, who would pay 20 million? Probably nobody at the moment. 18 doesn't get in the first team, handful of goals, nobody's going to pay that. And that's fair enough. But you know what? It's at the moment we're not reliant upon him. So let's take a few more questions. I've done the little Twitter ones. This is a really good question. This is from Hydrogen is God. My question is, did Nuno make Wolves or did Wolves make Nuno? Now, I really want to answer that one, but I think it's a great question. So do you want to guys go first or do you want me to go?
Crikey, I need a few hours to think about that.
We've got 14 minutes, son, and we've got to preview Palace.
Did Wolves make Nuno? I think you could obviously sit on the fence and say it's a bit of both, but if I had to choose one, I think Nuno made Wolves. We were languishing bottom half Championship. He brought quality, pace, pride back to the area. So if I had to choose one out of the two, I think Nuno did more for Wolves than maybe Wolves did for Nuno. It was a match made in heaven, wasn't it, those first 2.5 years? And obviously it's ended sourly, and what's happened this week, no Wolves fan would really want to see, but it does make you wonder, doesn't it? He'd taken us as far as he could, and I think he made us, if I had to answer it.
Yeah, Knocker, quick answer on that.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, there's no way we get promoted as champions, get into a FA Cup semi-final, finish 7th, European quarter-final, unless everyone's on the same page. So I think it was a partnership. Sometimes it works. Jimenez hasn't banged goals in the way he has anywhere else except for Wolves, because sometimes a club just fits you. And I think that Nuno and Wolves fit together really well.
Yeah, I think so. I think they'd gone as far as they can together. Obviously, I don't wish Nuno any harm. It was more of the annoyance of the splitting fans who were like, who would, that caused a bit of a rift, but you know what? He deserves our respect, and I'm sure he'll get that forever. Great question, Hydrogen as well. Thank you very much. Yeah. Move on to the Clown UK. Do we sign Tring and Hwang on what we've seen so far? Now, if we're judging on last night, it's an absolute no-brainer. Now, I think Hwang for 14 million. I mean, John Percy earlier on tweeted out that Wolves are looking to get that done in January for 14 million. Now, Knocker, 14 million pounds for Hwang, a guy in his mid-20s. He scored four Premier League goals now. Surely he has to be signed.
Yeah, I think you get that deal done. I think you definitely get that deal done. He's looking better and better now. He's not giving the ball away quite the way he was before. He seems to be more in control, and he's linking up well with Raúl. As far as Trincao goes, for me, we're in no rush. We've got the deal in place, so I'm giving that one to the end of the season, to be honest, and just see what happens. He could end up being a bit of a Vitinha still. There's a couple of good performances, and then there's a couple of dodgy ones. So I think we've got plenty of time on that, and we'll reassess the end of the season for me.
So here we go. I'm gonna put a twist on that then for you, Tyler. If Wolves were given enough money to cash in on Adama in January to sign Hwang and Trincao, we'd probably have to find 5 or 10 million ourselves. Is that something you would see as really good business?
Oh, I think so. I think Hwang's a no-brainer. I think Trincao's becoming a no-brainer. And I think we're also very impatient, aren't we? We're talking about people that have played half a dozen or so games. I mean, look at, we've got to be a bit more patient as a fan base. I think Wolves fans do want to see instant results, and this is the Premier League, and they've come into it from different leagues overseas. Neto took a long time to adapt to it. Look at him now. So I think sometimes we're a bit quick, but I'd get them both signed up. I think they're both good players.
I think this sort of leads on to that, and I think Steve Wise means 30 million. Traoré selling for 30 million if possible. Use the money on Trincao and other teams in the Premier League are based on balance, and with Traoré on our side, he might be a good player, but we lose the balance. And on the style of play last night, you have to say that. And if Wolves are going to continue to evolve to be this purist side, which with this manager built his reputation in Benfica on, then Trincao will be the player in the team, because obviously he's ridiculously pure in the way he brings people into the game. So that kind of, Steve sort of mentioned what I said a bit there, that if we could cash in and it meant making Trincao permanent as well as Hwang, I think that will be a good bit of January business. Now that hurts because I love Adama, the excitement he gives, but you know what? I love Wolves more than I love Adama, but what would really hurt would seem going somewhere like Liverpool. Because let's not make a mistake, not many teams wouldn't want Adama because of the way they play. I mean, in a team like that, we saw the impact that Jota had at Liverpool straight away. Now, obviously, Adama doesn't start for Liverpool, but imagine having that armoury for a team that already runs you to death anyway. It just, you certainly wouldn't want to be playing against you, would you? Thanks for your question, Steve.
I think for me, if it was 30, 40 million and you're getting in a Sanchez and a centre-back, for me then, it's a no-brainer. I think if someone said to me 40 million, you sell Adama, but you get Sanchez and a top centre-back, I think I'd be doing that deal.
It's a tough one. Knocker?
I think for me, it's really hard. I mean, if he's not going to sign on a deal, then you take the 30 million in a heartbeat if you're going to get those two players in. But if there's any chance he could still sign that deal, I mean, how many times have we had the conversation that we haven't got a plan B? Now, Adama is a plan B.
Plan B.
So
yeah.
Are you going to give that away? And what about the times when it's just really not working? Because Trincao, Podence, similar kind of players. Neto, similar kind of players. Same Wang. You've got Silva and Raúl, although the quality is different in terms of the positional places that they'll take up. It's very similar. Adama's just a lunatic, isn't he? You put him on and he goes where he wants. So are we giving away our plan B? I don't know.
But I think, like you said, we're so top heavy there. Can you afford to lose one of those and bolster elsewhere? And for me, that's a no-brainer. We're light in centre midfield. We're light at centre-back when the African Cup of Nations starts. If Marcel goes at the end of the season, Johnny might never be the same. We're light at left-back. If it meant getting, I think, 2 or 3 players that really did bolster the squad, I'd be doing that deal myself.
I think if he won't sign, he goes. If he signs for me, then I'll keep him as long as I can. That's just my own personal opinion on him. And then build around him. I
mean, I'll put a bit of... I shared some of my doubts on Twitter regarding Renato Sanchez, and I'm not really sure if that was it. The more I think about it, I don't know if it was true or not. Now, obviously, John Percy, when he says something, we listen because it nearly always comes true, and it says Wolves are interested again. Now, if Wolves could sign Sanchez, because I think they wanted, didn't know, something like 30, 35 million. I don't know the exact fee, what it was. If you could sell Adama and use the money to get Sancho, that's a no-brainer, isn't it, surely, to progress Wolves?
I'm doing that, 100%, yeah. 100%.
Okay.
I don't know.
For Sanchez?
The team is older than you, so
put Sanchez. Imagine Neves and Sanchez together, and then Wolves accidentally go to a back four. Don't say it.
I could see the logic, but why do we need Adama to get him now? Why can't we get him and Adama?
Because we're not spending the money over the last couple of seasons. Yeah, in an ideal world, I'm the same as you. Not ideal world, we keep him and we buy those two anyway. But if we had to do the deal to fund it,
I see what you're saying.
A top centre back and a top centre midfielder, that makes us a good.
Maybe
team,
it's just a bit of. Maybe it's just a bit of romance because I love watching him play and I love him getting off my feet. And I understand your points. And I know you're right and I know I'm wrong, but it's just the fact that I don't know. I mean, does Sancho play? Does he play for Liverpool? I don't think he gets in that team, but Adama does.
We link to him, but there's going to be other players like him out there, and Moutinho is not going to go on forever.
Yeah.
And for me, that, like I said, if we had
every time he says that, son, he plays like last night.
I know you're right. I know you're absolutely right, but I just can't bring myself to say it because I just think Adama's just. We've had the conversation before. He gets you off your seat. He brings the fun into football, and I know you're right. I just can't bring myself to say we get rid of him. For me, if there's any way to keep him, I'll keep him, right or wrong. I love watching him play football.
Yeah, it's a tough one, boys. It's a real tough one. I mean, but it's nice to have these problems. And let's say Neto's comes back at 90%. Yeah, he's going to be starting as well. So then how many players have you got out the team then? We are so top heavy then that, I mean, you're going to have 2 or 3 players like that sat on the bench. So if there's an opportunity, I mean, my business head says, yeah, cash in, but it's going to be hard to see Adama. And those things that he does, like, I mean, he dragged Wolves through that game at Villa Park. He didn't even play that great, yet he had a massive impact on the game. And when you turned to me, Knock, after he got fouled and said, this is going in, that wouldn't have happened without Adama. So,
no, it's such a difficult one.
What did he do at Leeds, Ryan?
He didn't do a lot, but what did Wolves do at Leeds, Tyler? But they
what did he do last night without him in the team? This is why it's such a good debate, isn't it? Because
I suppose it comes down to...
He splits opinion, doesn't he? He splits opinion massively. And
it comes down to, can a team like Wolves afford to carry a player and potentially those kind of wages? The answer is probably no. I mean, look at Jota. We got rid of Jota mainly because he wanted to move to Liverpool, but also with his injury record, again, we couldn't afford to carry a player who's potentially
45 million's a lot of money back then.
So, but, I mean, it's a nice conversation to have. I mean, we used to be talking about Gunnar Haller or Oleg Luzhny playing at left back anyway. So we're definitely in a much better place, and we are absolutely very, very top heavy. But yeah, for me, I can't bring myself to let him go because I love the man.
Right, boys, we've got a couple of minutes left. I promised my dad to get this up on the screen. You boys know I had a little bit of this as well. I mean, Dad likes to tell me that he gave me the advice on this. I'm not sure that's the case, Dad. But yeah, so well done, Dad, on that. And Knocker, you said it last week. You fancied Max Kilman to score first. You called it, but we bet on it. So
so I think I'm getting a cut of that then. And plus, if you're putting a $5 on Max Kilman to score a goal, son, you need to be getting yourself down to Gamblers Anonymous. There's a major problem there.
What did he score last night?
You know he's loaded in that Castore hoodie, son. You know you can't.
That's a week's wage for me. That would be.
He doesn't even need the money,
mate. It's the new sponsorship for the podcast that I'm about to announce. Right then. On the Saturday, Wolves have got a really tough game. Placing a team that's just gone and won at Man City 2-0. We've won at Man City 2-0. We were good that day a few years ago. They did a job. Palace did a job. They played against 10 men for that, I think, pretty much the second half. But still, if you go to Man City and win 2-0, you deserve respect. And this is going to be a hard game. Palace are getting a lot of praise for their style of play and what they've been producing. So for me, a lot of people look at this as a winnable game. I think this is a really hard game. For me, if you offered me a point at Palace now, I'm absolutely taking that from what I've seen so far. But what's your boys' your take on the game? Really, give me a quick take on the game, and then give me a score and a score. We've got 2 minutes left. Tyler, you got 30 seconds.
Very quickly, yeah. Palace have impressed me. I don't think we need to go there worried or scared, but I thought they were great away at Arsenal. They've obviously won at Man City. They're going to be flying. Same as you, Ryan. Take a point, but they're the sort of team that, you know, they like to play a bit of football now, so it might even work in our favour. So I'd like to think we could go there and still get a result. So I'll say a 1-1, I think.
Knocker?
I really fancy us. I really do. I think we're all wrong for Palace. I really do. I think we're all wrong for Palace. I think the way we've set up, the way we'll counter, the way that they'll push us, the space that Zaha leaves you in behind, I think Wolves will win the game. I've just got a feeling. I fancy a nice professional 2-0 with Jimenez back on the score sheet.
I mean, I would take that. But like you said, Palace now look like they're going to press us, look like they're going to come at us. And that's the kind of game that you kind of want Adama back in the side.
We're good away from home as well.
We are good away from home. I mean,
for a counter-attack.
I'm going to brave a 1-0 Jimenez again and go safe again. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Knocker, for coming on. This has been episode 11 of The Wolves Report. You can follow The Wolves Report on Twitter, YouTube and Facebook. Thank you for joining us, and up the Wolves.